Okay. Alrighty, welcome and thank you guys so much. So, from old school to new school, I think a lot of what those guys touched on can relate to social media. So, that's what Heath, Rich, and I are going to be talking about now, and myself. So, just a little background about me. I come from the drag racing world, but my husband is a rider, and so I'm very familiar with what we've been talking about here today. And a lot of the tips and advice that the guys have been talking about relates to a lot of every different type of motorsport out there. And so we're going to be talking about social media. And I know most teams, riders, pretty much everyone out there, old school and new school, is on social media. So Rich, Heath, and I are going to dive in and talk about how you can improve your value through social media. And so Rich, why don't let's start off with you, and can you explain how you use Hookit to value riders? And I've got my profile pulled up, and so I'll do a screen share of that while you can explain about Hookit.
I'll keep it as brief and as consensus as I can. Hookit's definitely been around for a long time, but I think more recently, and I say recently, but actually in the last 10 years, the business has keenly focused on social media and the data behind it. In doing that, I come from a racing background, like many of the folks who've been on the panel here, and have learned a lot about some of the fundamentals, some of the things that have bubbled to the top. And where Hookit steps in and where Hookit plays a role is actually making sense of the data. There is a lot of data out there. There's a lot of ways to value yourself, or at least say that you're valuable. But we take a real business mindset to it, track the data, partner with the platforms themselves, the Instagrams and Facebooks and Twitters of the world, and then produce that back in a scoring format so that it can be consumed in a way uh, that's logical and executable, if you want to use words towards it.
Yes, that's great. Okay, and Alex, I don't have ability to share my screen, so that's something we can include in the recording. But looking at it now, so there's three things that the score is based on, and it's commitment, performance, and reach. So, Rich, could you explain kind of how do you calculate reach from social media?
Yes, heavy question. Uh, but let's just use the general topic so that it is, understandable from the get-go. But there is a Hookit score, which is originally a piece of the software that we put out there publicly to have brands and athletes consume the data piece of the business. But we're looking at from the day one a power to weight ratio. So we have our followers that everybody knows and talks about. I have X number of followers, and then you have your content, and that could be a video, a photo, a reel. I mean, you can go through all the platforms and call them what you want. But from the content and the followers, you have interactions, things that people can do, like, share, comment, retweet. Um, Look, it's technology, and the way we perceived social media from day one was this power to weight ratio. So we look at followers and interactions, and that's our version of engagement. So from day one, we cared about how many followers you had, but we cared more about how many interactions you produced with those followers.
Yeah, that's good to know. And so, Heath, who's from Alpine Star, when you are looking at writers on social media, are you looking at those type of numbers on their profiles?
Hey, how's it going? I'm not sure if everybody can see me. You can? Yeah, so from Alpine Star's perspective, this is incredibly valuable because you think about the number one thing, not only just victories and, podiums, it's also the character and the brand that each rider represents. I'll give you a few examples of some of our top riders: Jet Lawrence, Hunter Lawrence, Justin Barsha, Axel Hodges, Hayden Deegan, Jason Anderson. Just a few of the hundreds of riders that we have. But even just saying those names, their following and what they do on social media brings extensive value. And you think about value as something that any writer, supported writer, we don't say sponsored writer, we say a supported writer. So when you're a supported writer, the value that you bring, the brands that support you, is everything. Of course, victory, standing on the podium is incredible, but also if you have those numbers like you're talking about, and you represent your brands that support you well. So you could have millions of followers, but if it's showing crashing, or it's showing, running from the police, or doing wheelies down the street, doing illegal stuff, those aren't numbers that represent us well. So yes, numbers are something, but it's also the branding that you as a rider are creating. Are you representing Alpine Stars, a premier brand in motorsports, well, or are you just crazy and making videos that would not make sense for a brand like us? So numbers, yes, are important, but it also has to be the content that's generated from that brand. I'm calling a rider a brand because every rider has a brand. Look at Jet and Hunter and what those guys have done as far as social media goes. It's next level. Justin Barsha does a great job. Axel Hodges, all these people that we support. Think about the visibility and value that they bring a brand like Alpine Stars, and we support them in return. So social media, has a huge part in who we look for in potential athletes to be supported by Alpine Stars.
Yeah, that's good to know. So Heath, has there been athletes that you've turned down for support because of what they do online, even though they might be winning and getting podiums?
Yeah, definitely. I have seen that happen, and it might not be an athlete. It might be like an influencer person, that's reached out to us and say, hey, I want to be supported. I have millions of followers. Then when we do the research and look, we're like, thank you so much for your interest, but this really isn't a direction we'd like to go in right now. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
happened.
exactly. And I'm seeing just from what, hearing online and seeing through brands that they are kind of getting more strict with that process of who they choose to support because anything you say online is permanent. No matter if you try and delete it right away, it's still there in the interwebs somewhere. And
Right.
so, yeah, anything like political, anything that's very polarizing. I've seen brands step away from someone that they support even a long time because maybe they put something out there that wasn't very appropriate,
And
and
we've had that happen.
unfortunately, yeah, you lose your
We've had that
followers.
happen recently. And so when I really talk about the writer's brand and who they create as themselves, say you have 5 or 10 people at brands that support you, you can't let them down because you want to hit numbers. If the numbers make sense, then cool, like you're doing something right. But if your numbers are being given, or it's fake numbers, we've seen that too, where someone pays, tons of money. Hey, I have 500,000 followers, can you guys support me? We do a little bit of digging, and they'll have a post that has 1 comment or 10 likes, and we're like, something's not right here. So it's not just the numbers, it's about engagement, and how are they interacting with people? Are they kind of like shaking hands and like being cool and responding and going back and forth with the people that follow them? Like we pay a lot of attention to that too. It's not just the numbers. I know I've said that more than once, but it really isn't. It all comes down to that brand that each rider is presenting as themselves and how they can do what they love to do and race, but also have a lot of great brands that will help support them in doing what they love.
Yes, that's so good. And so, Rich, with the looking at how Hookit looks at the numbers, engagements, followers on social media, have you seen where people are buying bots or they're buying likes or buying followers? Is that something that you've kind of run across?
Yes, I think everyone, has probably have some version or at least someone talking about it. I think that was actually when we first produced public data reporting on athletes. this was like a subject that would come up, well, what if I know that this person has bought a bunch of followers, and we were in a good position, and we've continued to like base this off of actually what he said, like if you have 5 million followers and you get 10 likes, it's almost stupid obvious. It's kind of like, duh. But one thing that our tools were doing was, I mentioned that like interactions to followers. So what we were able to do, you asked me if I've seen it, we were actually able to see it, but in a data mindset. So we would actually see a follower count and an athlete raise themselves up to the top of the list in a very short amount of time. And because a follow is an interaction, right? If you go to a page and click follow, that's an interaction. But once they landed on the profile and they were a follower, we all generally say we wanted to do something. We wanted to like our next photo, our next video. And so we would see this big spike in data, spike in the rankings, but then we would watch it for month after month. And all of a sudden, after month one, it would start to tank. And all of a sudden, this line would start to travel downwards to the point where it was very obvious they bought the followers because they could not keep up with a matching amount of interactions. So we put a lot of people on blast really early. And I'm hoping today that most of these athletes, and I know this isn't exactly true, don't come to guys like Heath and tell you how many followers they have before they know how many interactions they're getting compared to other athletes, compared to their peers. Because those days of just telling brand managers that you have a bunch of followers, they're done.
Yep.
Hopefully
it's,
you do your homework.
it's easily investigated. And
Right.
You're like,
Right.
oh, 5 million, huh?
Yeah.
Well, let's just look into that. And within half an hour of investigating, you'll know if it's legit or not. So
Very true.
be upfront from the beginning, make yourself legitimate as an athlete, not just on the track, but off the track, and brands will pay attention to that.
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of reminds me of the show Catfish and how much you can find out a person just by spending 30 minutes or even an hour online just digging through and researching through their profiles. And I don't know if racers or riders or teams kind of, sometimes they may forget that you have that ability to do that as well. And so they need to make sure that they are staying on top and staying consistent with their social media. And but I don't personally know anybody that has bought followers or likes or anything like that, thankfully. But I have noticed that, and this happened on our team page, actually, we've got a huge spike in increase in followers because we had one video on Instagram that went viral for us. So typically our videos get about, 5 to 15,000 views, and one of our reels ended up getting 2 million views over a couple of weeks, and we gained about 30,000 followers in that time just from one video. So Rich, is that kind of something that you look at, and are you trying to think, okay, maybe it's just something that went viral, or is it something where, maybe it's a scam? And then, we try to ride that wave and keep follower increase going, but sometimes it doesn't always work out.
Yeah. Well, one thing I've learned is that the platforms themselves, the Instagrams, the Twitters, and the Facebooks, and even the rest of them, they are testing often. So you'll notice that today an Instagram video is now called a reel, and they will produce and show that reel to different algorithms to test that kind of thing. So early days when a new feature comes out, sometimes, and this might be common, that you will see more followers all of a sudden. You mentioned the numbers, in which you're arbitrary to the point, though, because I heard you say it, where you might have had a video go viral. It can happen. Something crazy can happen on video, and you post it, and all of a sudden people are watching it. If you've gained those 30,000 followers, though, that's great, right? Now all of a sudden you have an audience. But the game is not to get another 30,000 followers. The game is to keep those 30 coming back, right? So people still today are racing to the follower number, and they forget that they have to have a show. You go to a concert, there's got to be a band. right? And then you can walk out if you don't like it. And that's what you don't want. You don't want one of those 30,000 coming to your page being off-putted or offended. They'll never come back, right? So that might dip a little bit into that idea of buying bots and buying followers. Granted, any ad that you see in any magazine, on any TV show, is buying followers. That's what that is. But they want them to buy the product or stay engaged. That's the point. So you can buy a bunch of followers, but you better have a good show, right?
You know, I'll tag in real quickly on that too. Is yes, this video, you know, might have gone viral, but you know, what was the video? What was the content? Was it something ridiculous like someone crashing or something that you know don't normally do? So for me, it's about understanding consistency. Is there a consistency to the page of high quality, of high value? To me, that's more important than one video. So what's one video? Cool. You got a lot of eyeballs, but is it consistent with what the rest of what you're doing? Right. And so for me, that's what makes sense long term, because it's always the long game. No one wants anything short game. You're investing in a rider for support, you know, that's a lot of money in dollars, and hoping that value comes back long term, not just one and done. And so yes, it's great to have that big hit, that big number, but if the consistency isn't there, then it's, you know, it's boiling hot and then it's cold again. So that's not good for a brand. And something that I want to touch base on, I just thought about it, is for all the riders that are getting into social media and knowing how important it is to stay on top of the trends. You know, he talked about the algorithm. Do all the riders know what's stronger? Do you know that stories has more reach in your followers than the main page does? Do you know that Reels has more attention right now because Instagram is opening up the algorithm? Do you know that? That's something that riders should also do. Not just post, but are you doing the right post? Because everything is leading right now in video. Instagram wants more video, because they want TikTok. They want to try and take over that. And so these are all things to understand from a rider's perspective, is where should I communicate my brand? And maybe there's a different way to communicate based on TikTok, based on Facebook, based on LinkedIn. You know, LinkedIn is another place to still communicate. It's opening up. It's not just to get hired anymore. And so are you communicating on all these platforms consistently? And that's what's important to us.
Yeah, that's so true. And you know, with Instagram, they, like you said, they're competing with TikTok. They're trying to take that over. You know, they did something similar with Snapchat by adding stories in, and then you saw TikTok blew up, so they added Reels in. And so Instagram is kind of just like the catch-all. Whatever they see popping up on another social media platform, they immediately try to add their own version there. And so in my opinion, Instagram is the most powerful. And Rich, I want to hear like what your opinion is on kind of how you would rank each platform. But one thing I did see today is a new update on Instagram is that they are changing the your profile. So instead of it being the square pictures and videos that you see on your profile, they're testing out vertical ones very similar to TikTok, so that way it is it's taking up more real estate, and it's just more about the videos that you're posting on your profiles there. So Rich, do you see, whenever you're doing your valuations and stuff, do you see any, like, what would you rank for the different platforms?
For sure, Instagram being number one. But just so everyone is all on the same, we do know that's Facebook, right? Or Meta. So Meta being number one, and they house Instagram and Facebook, two different demographics for sure. Instagram trends younger, but also two very different platforms. And I don't want to get into all the basics, but I think you were touching on being consistent. We use the word native, meaning to post natively to each brand or each platform, sorry, is very important. So that does mean posting an Instagram picture and then taking that, put it down, opening up Facebook and posting. If it's the same one, fine. But that is along the lines of posting natively, but also being consistent too. But Instagram today is number one to the athlete side of the world. But as far as the latest and greatest, right now we're doing data analysis on all of them. The one that is basically piping hot right now is TikTok, for sure. The engagement rates, though, not just followers by a long shot, but the amount of engagement. So, someone wearing an A-Stars t-shirt on a TikTok video right now, if it's an influencer with a good following, all of that good stuff, the numbers comparable for a TikTok engagement piece to a Facebook. I mean, TikTok is like out of this world right now. So if there's a trend, which we don't like to tell people what to do, but you would want to look at TikTok if you're an athlete right now. Very young demographic, but the numbers are blowing Instagram numbers out of the water. So
yeah, and TikTok, the age is growing. Initially it was looked at as
right.
a kid dancing on the video, right? But it's changing. There's more businesses involved. Like I see Harley Davidson posting normal videos that that rival an Instagram post, because the algorithms in TikTok are so open.
Yeah.
It's bringing more people to the platform, because Instagram, they want people to boost, they want people to pay. Right. So say you have 5 million followers. When you post something, are you hitting all 5 million? No, you're not even touching half that. And so it opens up depending on how well your post does. So do you know how that works? Sometimes understanding how a post works and how the numbers can grow based on, is it getting good reaction? Then it opens up. It's different. And so, to his point, yes, absolutely TikTok, but don't forget about YouTube.
For sure.
YouTube is another very powerful platform that we look at and see what our writers doing there. Look at Justin Barsha, what he's doing there. Specifically, Jason Anderson, look at Axel Hodges, what he's doing on YouTube. It's huge. It's basically their own private TV show. That if you're a follower of Axel Hodges or Justin Barsha, you want to see what they're doing at their ranch and their training and like all the silly stuff, watch the Justin Barsha TV show on YouTube. Same thing with Axel Hodges. And so all of these top writers that I'm talking about, they're strong on all of them, because they know everything here is about attention. Where are people's attention going, and how can you capture that and have them coming back and liking and commenting, because brands see that value in interaction. And that's one thing that we really strive for, is to see that in a writer.
Yeah, so Heath, without going into too much detail, so whenever you do sign up a writer to support, are you telling them that, is it part of the agreement that they need to post and tag Alpine Star in a certain number of posts each month? Or do you have it set in contracts for social media? Or is that kind of up to the writer and they can do whatever they want?
No, none of our negotiations have to do with how many posts or how many tags or anything like that. That's just kind of part of the program. With writers these days, a contract doesn't talk about that. That's up to the writer. You want to bring visibility to your brand, you're going to do it right. And obviously with us working with them, it's working. And so, are there times where we have a new launch coming up? We lean on our writers saying, hey, we got some posts for you. Can we make sure this goes up on this day at this time? Here's a suggestive, post. Obviously, that's something different. When we have something new to promote, we lean on our writers to help give us that visibility. That's part of the support and back and forth. And so it's not part of a contract, but when we need to lean on a certain writer or writers because of a launch, it happens.
Yes, and you probably are picking the ones that you want to use for the launch based on their brand, right?
Of course. Well, them being an Alpine Stars athlete, they are our brand. And so it's not picking who, like they're all there, they're all part of the family. So everyone is part of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And that's very interesting because I will say it's a little bit different in the drag racing world. But, it just kind of shows how motorsports are different when it comes to sponsorships. And so, Rich, I want to go back to Hookit. And so, Alex did give me permission now to share my screen. So, I want to pull up my profile and just go and show any of the riders here that maybe have never used Hookit before, just kind of the basics of it. And so there is a free membership that you can do, but there's also paid versions where you can have more access to the insights, into exclusive deals. And so mine is set up for drag racing, but you can choose which motorsport you are in. And I know for Hookit that the way how I got introduced through it was through my husband riding. And so I know it's much bigger in the motocross world. And so this is my profile. And so, like I said earlier, there's three different factors that determine your score: your commitment, your performance, and your reach. And so, if anybody has any questions about those, you can leave them in the chat, and then Rich can answer them for you. And then down below, there's just some basic information. So stats, I only did 2 races this year, so that's why you see that here. And so it shows 2 events, 2 sessions, travel coverage. And then I have it linked to my social media profile, so it shows interactions and followers there. There's vitals. You can also add some highlights, which I have not added in there yet. And then you can also see brands that I have got support from directly through Hookit. And so I have GoPro, Weld, and I have Fuel. And then, which these are all companies that I've used before I joined Hookit earlier this year. But what's really cool is that you can get exclusive discount codes through your Hookit. And so, for example, GoPro, we use GoPro cameras on our car, and I've always just paid in full online or through Amazon. And I wish I would have set this up sooner, because I think it's like 20 or 30% off GoPro camera and all their accessories here through Hookit. You can link media and press. So these are 2 different articles that I had earlier this year. And then the races. And so I did Nitro Chaos, Night on Fire, and got first place at both of those, which is pretty cool. And then it's got a map that shows both of those. And then there's also this section for equipment, which I don't have anything there, and people I drive with. So you can tag your other friends that you practice with and ride with, and they'll show up there. And so, Rich, was there anything I missed to kind of explain the profile?
No, you did great. I'm pretty excited to see a Hookit profile up on the screen here. It's been a long time that we've been working on these, but it's also part of what I might mention is that these profiles and what we've added to them have been around for a long time, nearly 20 years, and I've been here 18 of those years. What we've added to them, how we score, is definitely new stuff, but for what it's worth, it is a fundamental thing. I think it was Pilo from OGO earlier. I think it was him that said something like a rolling resume. And I love that because that's been used often for what a profile on Hookit is. Certainly there's the 50 brands that we work with. Those are 2 of which you've got, Weld Wheels and GoPro, but there's no reason that this link or profile can't be something useful or an ongoing rolling resume for any event you go to. Anyone that wants to know who you are, you're a click or a text away with this link. So it's held value for athletes from pro to amateur across the board. There's clearly some things you can do within the software that allows you to connect with brands like GoPro and Weld. But I also think, generally speaking, being able to be scored with your results, with your social media, and how often you do your sport, typically brand managers want to know that stuff. So I think it's a fundamental good way to get started, first of all, but then also keep you organized as you go through it.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I got introduced to it through my husband writing, and so he would log even all of his practice sessions inside of Hookit, and it just helps improve your score. And also, I love what you said that it's a rolling resume, because that's something I know like right now is the time that brands are opening up applications for sponsorships next year, and most of the time they are asking for a resume, especially if you're a new writer or a new team that they haven't worked with before. And so it is so easy to just send them a link and it's automatically updated, instead of doing a profile, or sorry, a PDF resume attachment in an email or online is great, but this is something that is going to be different and unique, and they can go through and scroll through and see photos and stuff like that, and it links directly to my Instagram. And so there's like he can go in and see comments, likes, interactions, all that type of stuff. It's there. It makes it easy for the brands, and it makes it easy for the writers as well. And then also, I did want to show, so like I was saying earlier, like some of the deals that you can get. So yeah, so my deal is 30% off, and all I had to do was click a couple links to apply for this, and automatically got it through Hookit. And they'll also send you other programs that you qualify. So like here, it's showing these are all ones that I can apply for, and super easy. Just takes maybe 2 minutes to set it up. So. Okay, let's see. Was there any questions about that in the chat box? Okay, we don't have anything directly about Hookit, but there was a question, and so Rich, I think this is more for you, but Heath, you can chime in. He asked, "What's the current valuation for socials?" Is it 0.5 cents per impression? Could you lightly touch on this?
Um, I could, but I won't have a ton of context around actual dollar amounts. But um, if given an opportunity at a different time, and looking at what we've done in the data world for the Hookit side, it's actually very relevant. We are able to produce dollar amount value next to athletes and entities and show brands that particular data. What we're talking about today is definitely more basic to that, and maybe earlier days than that. So I don't want to make a call out on an actual value per impression. Some of that data is out there, but trust that it's different per platform. Just like different magazines have different ad rates, and TV shows have different. It costs a little less to be on MAV than it probably does to be on an NBC show or something like that. But those rates are different. But brands of the world are used to paying those. So part of what we've done over the years is actually like take in that data, ask, what did you pay for that boosted post on Facebook? And that is part of our algorithm ourselves. So.
Good to know. And we did have a question for you. Lewis asked, does Hookit work globally, or is it just for US or North America?
Does work globally. The predominant set of customers, though, have been over here in the States. We got going in the motocross community 20 years ago, so that particular US motocross community is heavy on here. I personally come from a mountain bike and cycling background, and was going to the nationals at certain times, so brought in that particular set of people. But that does work globally, and we have a handful of companies who are offering support globally. It's just being managed out of their US office. So if given the opportunity, though, it's the internet. It works globally just the same.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Okay, so Heath, what do motor brands want to see from athletes online? So I know, like you mentioned, YouTube. Is there other types of motor or other types of platforms or certain types of content that you really look for from an athlete?
Mm, for me, saying personally, I feel the writers just need to be themselves, showing who they are, because it will show eventually, and so being just who the rider is. There's no specific thing as, what do we look for in posts? Um, Obviously you can tell if someone is being very professional with their posts and what they're doing. Um, you know, are things shot really well? Are things really grainy? Are they out of focus? Of course, we look at the quality. And so I say quality needs to be number one, and how the riders brand themselves. You know, I wouldn't say is number two. Like everything could be number two. And so, no, there's not really one specific thing that we're looking for, one specific platform. It's consistency in a good quality brand. Of course, great results. If you're talking about racing support, that always is very helpful, because we work with the best athletes. It shows with results of motocross championships. Last year, we had every single championship in motocross. This year, we've already had a few so far, and in outdoor motocross, our riders are battling for the championship right now in 250 and 450. And so results do mean a lot, but also look at, on top of just the results, look at those guys and their branding and who they are. I like to say, look who is leading, not only in championships, but who's leading on social, who's doing a great job on social. Follow their lead. Find ways to maybe mimic what they're doing if it's successful, but be yourself. Authenticity is number one, and it's going to show in long term. And like I said, for us, it is the long game. It is the long term. So consistency, be yourself, be a high quality athlete on top of a high quality brand, and how you represent in your posts. And, brands like us, like, the connections will come. Nothing's going to be forced. So that's it in a nutshell, what I would think and say about that.
Yeah, that's great. Well, and a lot about what the guys were saying in the last session about how to get in the media. And so, one thing that I like to tell my students and the racers that I help with social media is, it is, that is number one, but then also, like you were saying earlier, to be consistent online and showing up even when you're not racing. So between races during the week, or even just during the off season and those months that you have off, typically like in the wintertime, you don't just want to be a ghost on social media. You want to show up and show your fans and your followers what are you working on. And it could be race related, or it could be something that's very personal. And I think that for our type of industry, showing pictures of bikes and cars and all that is great and it's cool, but people online are there for the human aspect of it, and they want to get to know who is the person behind the helmet. So if riders and racers out there, if they can show more of their vulnerability and being authentic online, I think that is going to help them tremendously with not only growing their brand, but growing their followers and growing how many people they can reach. And really go, you can go wide with it, but also try to go deep with your followers and really build those relationships. And I like what Ping said earlier. I wrote it down. He said relationships are what will move you forward, and whether it's in person or online, whether you're trying to get sponsorships or you're just trying to grow followers online, I think that kind of mentality about focusing on the relationship can, it's equal across the board. And so, one thing that I did want to show you guys today is about how to be posting consistently online and on social media. And so Instagram is my number one platform, and it could be different for you guys. I really like to base it on what do you like to use, but also looking at, okay, who is your target market? What type of audience are you trying to reach out to based on your brand or your sponsor's brand, and focus on that platform. I like to have one main platform and then have 1 to 2 secondary platforms. I don't recommend for riders to be on every single social media platform out there, just because you probably don't have time for it, and you're going to get very overwhelmed if you're trying to post on every single one. Even if you're trying to do just one a week on all of them, it gets to be a lot. So my main focus is Instagram. Again, it could be different for you, but it might probably also be Instagram as well. And then my secondary is Facebook and then LinkedIn. So I post on Instagram 6 days a week. I do Monday through Saturday and take off Sundays unless I am racing and I'm at an event, because we typically race on Sundays. And then on Facebook, I post 4 days a week. And then LinkedIn, it's 2 or 3 days a week. And I like to alternate, so it's different days for each platform. So that way I'm not spending, I don't have to spend all day long on social media, because I've got work I got to do. I've got a little baby that I've got to feed and put him down for sleep and all that stuff. And so like I was saying, Instagram 6 days a week, so that's every day. But then LinkedIn and Facebook, I like to alternate. So I like to say don't spend more than 30 minutes on social media, and that's making your post and then staying on after you post for 20 minutes or whatever, and engaging with people, whether it's people that are commenting, they are interacting with your stories, they're sending you messages, or you can be going to interact with other people's profiles. And so that's one of the best engagement tips I can give the riders that are listening today, is go and leave comments on other pages. And it could be other riders, it could be people that are just fans, or it could be brands like Alpine Star and Troy Lee and all those other companies out there. Especially if you are trying to get that support from one of those brands, that is one of the best ways to get your foot in the door, is by getting your name known through social media. And so typically the person that is doing the social media for the brand isn't the same person that determines sponsorships. But if you build a relationship with the social media manager of that page, then that gives you a good in and a good rapport, so that person can then pass your name along when it comes to time to kind of figure out who they want to support and sponsor for the next season.
Hey, Megan,
So,
along those lines, we just had a question come in,
okay, what's
and
that?
it's for Heath, actually. When is the proper time to tag or collab with either brands or other athletes?
When is a proper time?
Yeah, like I think what they're asking is, like, do you do it every single time you post? Do you have to
Oh,
have,
I see what you're saying. So,
not
so
necessarily like 5 o'clock.
yeah. So what he's talking about, for those of you that don't know, like Instagram has an option to where we do it with some of our riders, or between disciplines for our socials. We have motocross, we have touring, we have cycling. So say you're a motocross rider and you want to collaborate with your supporter. So you would have to work with that social media department saying, hey, I have this big video that I'm putting out there. Could we collaborate on this post? So what that means, you're getting Alpine Star's 2 million followers and your followers to all see your video. So that's what that means. So it is a big deal. So is this something you want to hit them up with all the time? Hey, I just washed my bike. Can we collab on a photo? It's like, no. So for those riders thinking of something, doing something like that, make it a significant piece. Because think of it from Alpine Star's perspective. Like, why would we want to share whatever it is the content you're doing? So for us, we would need to see it. Like, hey, this is what I'm considering putting up. Would you be interested in collabing with me on it? Then we could look it over and see if it makes sense. And if it does, we would. And if it doesn't, then we say, I'm sorry, we can't support that at this time. So number one, the content has to be worthy. And two, you got to space it out. And three, you got to reach out to your supporter and see if they would be willing to do that. So it's not really a time thing. It's just if the content is worthy and you're both in agreement of it, then absolutely. But just understand that it's a special thing to be accepted to do that.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. And so Heath, would you say that there should be like a time frame of when they let you know, or whenever, maybe they have an idea of a cool video they want to make? Um, how much time in advance would you need to be able to get that approved and say, yes, let's post this today?
I'd say no less than 7 days, because our social media schedule is pretty crazy. We have like 10 pages that we organize. So obviously there's a lot of planning that goes in. So I would say at least 7 days. Um, yeah, I'd say a week.
Yeah, that's good. And so for the writers that are on listening, so planning out your content ahead is key, especially if you want to do collabs with certain brands, but also just to kind of help save you time and save your sanity. And so I'm going to share with you a screen of one of the social media calendars that I make for one of my racing clients. And so all I do is I make a calendar spreadsheet on Excel and I share it with them so that way we can both update and post and change things around if we need to. And so as you can see, it's color coded. So I have purple for Instagram, yellow is for Twitter, and then blue is for Facebook. And so like I was saying earlier, how I alternate, I do the same thing with my clients. And then I also, I like to wait a few days before posting something um, that I've already posted on Instagram, wait a few days before I go and post it on Facebook, just so that way it's not too repetitive, and so that way it can maximize engagement and results on both platforms. And so I like to do just about a week at a time, to where first off it's a blank calendar, and then I'll go in and fill in the races. And so like you can see here, there was Brainerd, and then they had Denver, and then they raced at Norwalk. And so I'll go in, put in what events that we have coming up, and then I'll work backwards from there. So how can I build up hype for this event? Is there something special that's going on? Maybe we have a new sponsor coming on just for this weekend, or maybe there's something local and we're going to go and do a display, anything like that. And then I like to plan out, okay, so I'm going to do that 2 days ahead this week, and then I need one or two other posts. Well, I could do a highlight video, or maybe I could share results from the same event last year, or I could also do behind the scenes content. It does really, really well. So showing how are you working on the car or on the bike to get it ready? What are you changing for your setup for this event? How are you loading it in the trailer, driving down the highway, setting up your pit area, stuff like that. And so what I like to do is have content categories, which you can see in this column over here. And so I like to say no more than 5 of your primary content categories, and then a couple of your what I call filler content categories. And so I have them in bold here, the primary ones. So pre-race hype, race and test results, and then doing a post-race highlight. So I usually do this as a reel video on Instagram, and then wait a couple days, share that on Facebook, which now has reels. And then behind the scenes, working in the pits, working in the shop, and then sponsor product promos. And then the filler categories we do are introductions, personality, and then something that's family and something that's personal. And so this is one of the content calendars I make for one of my teams that I'm working with. And so this way, very easy to go in and plan content. So beginning of the month, I'll throw in what we have, and then each week I'll just fill in what the blanks are for however many posts we plan to do that week. And then from there, I'll go in and on a separate tab, I'll write all the captions, and then that way they can go in and be like, okay, yes, this is good, or no, we need to change this, we need to change wordage on this. And so this is a system that can be easily replicated by any team, any writer out there, to kind of organize your social media, plan it out in advance so you can save time, so you know, okay, what am I going to post? And then also, if you have any really cool creative ideas, it gives you plenty of time to mark it on the calendar and then reach out to brands if you want to collab with them. Or then it also gives you time to go in and record, take pictures, anything like that that you need to do in order to get those posts done and ready to post. So that way it's not 5 o'clock and you're like, oh crap, I haven't posted in 3 days. What am I going to share online? So if anybody has any questions about
Megan, we actually
content
do have a
planning,
couple
anything like
questions.
that, I would be happy to help.
Megan, we do have a couple questions over here. And that's a two-part question. I think will actually involve both Rich and Heath. Rich can answer the first portion of the question. It is about sharing. So if you don't see a whole lot of action through a post, can Hookit show you what shares and kind of things like that have happened via social media like Instagram and Facebook? And then to follow that up, Heath, maybe you can tell us what would be a better way to share it so that you get maximum amount of reach throughout your post.
I want to try to answer the best I can there. As far as Hookit showing you who shared or what platform reshared, that's definitely not what we show you. But what we would show you is when and if they did and the numbers behind that. So ways to make your post get more, I mean, those are per platform type of directions on that. But certainly there are fundamentals and there are ways that Megan, you're doing your scheduling is great. I think that is something that any athlete could take away. I know there's also a few blurbs that we've also seen over the years, one of them being posted natively to each platform, but then also because it's relevant and maybe some of these athletes listening in today have multiple sponsors, most of them do, posting with only one logo, one sponsor, one marketing campaign per post is exponentially more valuable than the posts that include all of your sponsors at the same time. So if you were to use your scheduling there, I saw how you were doing the days of the week. I mean, there's 7 days of the week and you have 7 sponsors. That's a really easy way to schedule your posts out. If you put all 7 sponsors in each post, you're going to have to do it 7 times the amount every time. Just if you want to think of numbers. Heath would be seeing a lot more value from a post that just had Alpenstars in it. One of those posts could be worth 10 of them where you had multiple sponsors in them. So some of the fundamentals are there, but having a schedule, knowing which platforms you have the most followers and engagement in can start to narrow down when and what you post. Because it is a topic of discussion, how many platforms are out there, what time and how many times to do it are big questions out there. But I think keeping it efficient and knowing what gets the best juice from the squeeze is probably your best bet.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And then from a brand side, Heath, maybe you can add a little bit onto that.
Yeah, can you refresh the question again so it's clear from my perspective?
To me, I think the question means the most, it's a little confusing, but I think it means the most like when you share, do you go out there and like talk to every single person you know to share that type of content so that it gets the most numbers? Or do you develop the content, like what Rich was saying, a little bit more strategic so that it's easier for a brand like you to share? What I kind of got from the question was, do I call my family to have them share this content all over social media, or like maybe break it down a little bit?
Okay, so when you're talking about sharing, the example would be a writer posts a great air that he did on a page. And so what he's looking for is people to share that post, right? That's what this question is how do you get more people to share the post?
I think so, but I also think that they're trying to use their resources to share the post as well. So whatever they can do to grow their reach is what I think they're trying to do. But what I got from what Rich said, and I think this will probably align better with you, is that keep it focused. If you focus it, it'll probably be easier to get somebody like you to share it instead of calling your family to share it. Because if your family shares it, you're going to get a lot less value out of Alpinestars sharing it.
Cool. So I'll give you an example. And so from a sharing perspective, Instagram stories, we get tagged in posts on motocross, 5,000 a day. Do we share all of those? Absolutely not. So there is a quality to the share. I'm talking about stories in general, because stories is easy for us to share. We share athlete posts all the time, but it needs to be, you see what we share. If you go to our pages and follow us and see what we share, as a writer, I would mimic that. Like, oh, Alpine Stars shared that. Well, that's a really cool picture. That's a really great video. There is a quality to the ability for us to share. And yes, it's about value. And so I'm giving the stories as an example. Say a writer posts something on stories and he tags all of his sponsors on the picture. Is that of value to us? Absolutely not. Is there a way to tag all of your sponsors and hide them? Yes. Do you know how to do that? And so there's a little bit of, this is a really big question, but it all comes down to the content. Is it shareable to a brand? And as you're saying, yes, schedule out Alpine Stars one day, another brand another day, Honda another day, all of that makes sense. But if the quality of the post isn't right and it's not shareable, then someone like Alpine Stars, we wouldn't. And so how to do a post that is shareable is something that a writer should research. And how do you research? What are we sharing? What are brands that support you sharing? And then capitalize on that. So that's what I would say. There are things that we do share and there are things that we don't, but it's all about quality.
Yeah, they said thank you. That was a perfect answer. Thank you very much.
Cool.
Yeah, that was very good. Thank you, Heath.
All right, Megan, we only got a couple minutes left.
Okay. Well, was there any other questions that came in, George? If not, I think we might have wrapped everything up.
I actually have a personal question about social media. Should I have it's really difficult for me to manage all of these different networks. I don't go on TikTok because I don't have enough time to do it. If I focus on just something like Instagram, is that actually still providing value since I don't have all of them? Can I just focus on one?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. But just, I mean, I think it was Button that said something earlier. It was like, there's always going to be somebody faster or better or doing something better. So the question and answer back is, if you only have time to do Instagram or you're looking for the best bang of your buck, I would use Instagram. It's getting the most the most engagement. But you're up against someone that's going to be able to have time to do Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and do it really, really well. So that's the answer. You don't have to. But to be the most valuable, you would want to find the time to do the most. So, but to answer back to you, I think it's very real that we don't have all day, all the time in the world to do all these. So if you're to use your time wisely, you're doing it right by sticking with Instagram right now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Rich.
From a perspective from Alpine Stars, I agree. Is it ideal? Absolutely not. Because what is a brand looking for? A brand is looking for value. Is that value all going to be on one platform? It's okay. But if someone really cares about supporting their brands, they're going to go in multiple areas. That makes sense. Of course, Instagram is a heavy hitter, but are you putting the effort into YouTube? Are you putting forth the effort into TikTok? Obviously, because of what we said earlier, it's a very valuable platform because of the attention that it's getting. So value, 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 and just incredible content that makes sense to you as a brand and being consistent.
All right, Megan, we're pretty much done. Do you have anything left?
No, I don't think so. I think we've kind of covered everything for social media. And so yeah, so thank you, Rich and Heath, for joining us today, talking about how to use Hookit and how you kind of use that to gauge the number of followers and interactions for your score. And then he's talking about how important having a brand online is for writers and how you base your support on how well they are online. And it's not just about podiums and performance. It's also about your brand and how you portray yourself online and how authentic you are. So thank you guys.
Welcome.
Thank you guys. That was really good. That was a great session.